I canceled my sister-in-law's wedding venue 2 days before her big day. And honestly, I don't feel bad about it. Not even a little. People might call it petty, vindictive, or cruel, but they don't know the whole story. They don't know what it's like to be disrespected, insulted, and used by the very people you bent over backward to help. They don't know how it feels to be called a gold digger by a family that's been living off your generosity for years. 6 months earlier, I thought I was doing something kind. Vanessa, my husband Ethan's sister, had just gotten engaged, and her dream venue required an $8,000 deposit. She and her fiancé didn't have it. They were drowning financially, still living with his parents, but somehow she wanted a 200-guest, fairy tale wedding. Ethan came to me one night, saying, it would mean a lot if we could help her. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but only on one condition. The venue deposit would be in my name. That way, if anything went wrong, I'd get the money back. Everyone thought that was fair. Vanessa cried tears of joy. Ethan's parents showered me with thanks. I felt proud for helping, but just 2 weeks later, everything came crashing down. I came home early from a work trip and found Ethan in our bed with his ex-girlfriend. My whole world shattered in that instant. I kicked him out that night and filed for divorce the next morning. I thought that was the end of it, but his family had other plans. They didn't care that their son had betrayed me. All they cared about was the money. Divorce or not, his mother said coldly over the phone, you're still paying for Vanessa's wedding. I should have hung up, but instead, I made a quiet promise to myself that day. They wanted to see how petty I could be. They were about to find out. I tried to convince myself that maybe she didn't mean it that way, that maybe her laughter, her sneers, her whispered remarks were just my imagination. But deep down I knew better. Every word my sister-in-law spoke carried a sting, wrapped in fake sweetness that only I could see through. It started small, a little jab here, a sarcastic comment there. Oh, you're wearing that, she'd say, pretending to fix my dress. Or, you're lucky my brother doesn't care much about appearances. When we'd be getting ready for family events. At first I smiled through it. I told myself peace was better than confrontation. But peace built on silence slowly eats away at your soul. My husband never saw it. He thought we were getting along. She's just teasing, he'd say, shrugging it off. But he didn't see the way her eyes lingered on me, measuring, judging, daring me to react. When I finally spoke up one night, he sighed, you always take things too personally. He said, that night, I cried quietly beside him while he slept, wondering if maybe I was too sensitive. Then came the dinner. My sister-in-law invited the whole family over. The moment I walked in, I could feel the tension wrap around me like smoke. Every conversation felt like a trap. Every question a test. So, when will you two finally have kids? She asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. My chest tightened. She knew we'd been trying. She knew how painful that topic was. I forced a smile, said something polite, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I finally let the tears fall. Looking in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. The girl who once spoke her mind, now hid behind forced smiles and bitten lips. That night, as I sat in silence while everyone laughed around the table, something inside me broke. I realized this wasn't just about her, it was about me. About how long I had allowed myself to shrink just to keep the peace. And from that moment, I knew something had to change. The change didn't happen overnight. It started quietly, almost invisibly, like the first crack in glass before it shatters. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped defending every reaction, every feeling, every choice I made. It wasn't easy. Every time my sister-in-law spoke with that smug tone, the old urge to shrink, to stay quiet, rose inside me. But I swallowed it down and chose silence, not the weak kind, but the powerful kind that unsettles people who are used to seeing you bend. One afternoon, I visited their house to drop off a package my husband forgot. She opened the door, her smile sharp as ever. Oh, you came by unannounced. That's brave of you, she said. The old me would have laughed awkwardly, made an excuse, and left quickly. But that day, I simply met her gaze and said, I didn't come to see you. Then I walked past her, calm and steady. The look on her face was priceless, shock. Then confusion. She wasn't used to that version of me. That evening, I stood at the kitchen sink replaying that moment. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. My husband noticed it too. You seem different lately, he said. Watching me carefully, I just smiled. Maybe I finally learned how to breathe. But change, I soon learned, comes with consequences. My sister-in-law didn't like losing control. Her jabs became bolder, her gossip sharper. She began twisting stories, making me out to be distant, cold, ungrateful. At family gatherings, I could feel the eyes, the quiet judgment, yet I refused to react. The silence I once used to protect peace, I now wielded as power. For the first time, I wasn't surviving her anymore. I was observing her. And that shift, that calm defiance, scared her more than any confrontation ever could. Because she could sense it too. Something in me was changing permanently. And soon, she would have to face the version of me she'd never believed existed. The real storm hit 2 weeks later. It started with a phone call from my husband's mother, her voice trembling with outrage. "Why would you do that to family?" She yelled before I could even say hello. My heart sank. I already knew what it was about, the wedding venue. See, months earlier, I had paid the $8,000 deposit for my sister-in-law's wedding venue. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. She'd begged for help, claiming her savings weren't enough and promising to pay me back after the wedding. I believed her. Family helps family, right? But then, during a family dinner, everything changed. Out of nowhere, she joked about me being a gold digger who married well. Everyone laughed, everyone except me. My husband's mother even added, "Well, at least she's useful for something." And they all cackled. My hands trembled as I sat there, smiling tightly, feeling my face burn. That night, I cried in silence beside my husband, who was too stunned to defend me earlier. Something inside me broke, something I had been protecting for years. The belief that love and sacrifice could make people treat you better. 2 days before the wedding, I called the venue and canceled. I didn't yell or explain. I simply told them to refund the deposit to the original payment method, mine. When my sister-in-law found out, she lost it. She called me every name in the book, screamed that I'd ruined her big day. But I stood firm. "No," I said quietly. "You ruined it the day you disrespected me after I paid for it." For once, the silence that followed wasn't painful, it was powerful. Everyone was furious, of course. The gossip spread like wildfire. But deep down, I didn't care. Because for the first time, I wasn't the woman they could use, mock, and discard. I was the woman who finally said no. The next morning, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls, furious texts, even a few voice notes dripping with fake concern. "You've embarrassed this family. Do you know how much stress you've caused? We'll never forgive you for this." I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and staring at the silence I had created. It was oddly peaceful. My husband came downstairs, rubbing his temples. "You really canceled it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said, meeting his eyes. "I did." He didn't yell or argue. He just sat across from me and sighed. "You know they'll never let this go." "I know," I said, "but I'm done letting them disrespect me while I fund their lives." That week, the entire family turned against me. My mother-in-law went on Facebook, posting cryptic quotes about ungrateful women who destroy happiness. My sister-in-law spread lies that I was jealous of her marriage. People whispered, judged, pointed, but none of it broke me this time. Then something unexpected happened. The venue manager called me personally. "Ma'am," she said, "I just wanted to tell you, I've never seen anyone handle a situation like this with so much grace. You saved yourself a lot of future headaches. That family is difficult." I laughed for the first time in days. It felt like a small sign from the universe, telling me I had done the right thing. 2 months later, I learned the groom's family pulled out of the wedding altogether after finding out about the drama. The event never got rescheduled. And though my in-laws still glare at me during every family gathering, I don't flinch anymore. I've realized that peace doesn't come from keeping everyone happy, it comes from finally choosing yourself. Because sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't make you the villain. It makes you free. A few weeks later, the dust still hadn't settled. Every family dinner was a cold war disguised as civility. The glares, the whispers, the forced smiles. It was all so thick. You could almost choke on it. Then one evening, I received a message from my sister-in-law herself. "You ruined my life, I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "You ruined your own wedding the moment you disrespected the person who paid for it." Then I hit send and turned off my phone. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. But the real reckoning came a few days later. My father-in-law, quiet, observant, never one to interfere, asked to meet me privately. When I arrived, he looked older, wearier than I'd ever seen him. "I've watched how they've treated you," he said, "and I won't pretend it's right. You did more for this family than any of them care to admit." For a moment, I couldn't speak. No one had ever said that aloud before. Then he added softly, "Sometimes it takes burning one bridge to make everyone see who's been crossing it for free." His words hit me deep. Later, I found out my sister-in-law had tried to book another venue using my name, pretending I was still funding her wedding. The venue called me to confirm the payment, and when I told them the truth, she was blacklisted from every major hall in town. Her carefully crafted image, as the innocent bride, crumbled overnight. People began to whisper that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the victim after all. When she finally saw me at a family function weeks later, she couldn't even look me in the eye. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. Because in the end, I'd learned something powerful. Silence can be the loudest revenge. And peace, when earned through courage, is worth every broken tie. And as I left that gathering, I realized I hadn't lost a family. I'd just uncovered who really belonged in mine. Months passed, and life slowly found its rhythm again, but not without scars. My husband stood by me through it all, though the tension in his family lingered like smoke after a fire. His sister avoided me completely, and her mother pretended nothing ever happened, as if sheer denial could rewrite history. At first, I thought I'd feel regret. I expected guilt to creep in during quiet moments, but it never did. If anything, I felt lighter, freer, like I had finally drawn a line in the sand and said, no more. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from the original venue manager. "We've been hearing about what happened," she said carefully and honestly. "We've had many clients deal with similar family issues. I just wanted to say, you did the right thing, you protected yourself." Her words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd felt like the villain of someone else's story. But maybe, I was just the woman who stopped letting others write hers. A few weeks later, I started a small wedding coordination business. Ironic. I know, but it was born out of what I'd learned. Never mix money, emotion, and entitlement. I helped brides plan without drama, taught them how to budget wisely, and protect themselves legally. It grew faster than I ever imagined. Then one afternoon, I got a message request on social media. It was from my sister-in-law. "I know I don't deserve it," she wrote, "but I wanted to say sorry. You were just trying to help. And I made you the enemy. The wedding didn't happen." He left me a week later. I think I needed to fall to see what I'd done. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied simply, "I wish you peace." That was it, no anger, no satisfaction, just closure. As I put my phone down, I smiled, not out of spite, but strength, because the truth was, I hadn't just canceled a wedding. I'd canceled a cycle of disrespect that had gone on for far too long. And that, to me, was the real happy ending. A year later, I was sitting in my office, yes, my office, surrounded by fabric samples, wedding binders, and softly glowing candles. My company, Ever After Events, had become one of the most recommended boutique planners in the city. The irony of it all still made me laugh sometimes. The woman who once canceled a wedding was now helping others plan theirs, with peace and boundaries intact. Then one morning, an envelope arrived in the mail. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was my mother-in-law's. I hesitated before opening it, expecting the worst, maybe another jab or passive-aggressive guilt trip. But inside was an invitation. "You're cordially invited to the renewal of vows of Diane and Mark." My sister-in-law's name. My heart skipped. The event was scheduled for a small garden venue 2 months away. Underneath the card, there was a note in my mother-in-law's script. "No hard feelings, dear. We'd love for you and my son to come." I almost laughed. No hard feelings. After everything. After being called a gold digger and a homewrecker for paying for their dreams. I tucked the invitation under a stack of papers and went back to work. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. My husband noticed my quietness and asked, "You thinking about the invitation?" I nodded. "Yeah, I just don't know if I want to be there." He looked at me for a moment and said, "You don't owe them attendance. Love, but if you go, don't go for them. Go for you, to show them who you became despite them." He was right. I wasn't the woman they once belittled. I wasn't the one who needed their approval or validation. So 2 months later, I walked into that garden venue, not as the villain of their story, but as the woman who wrote her own. Heads turned. My sister-in-law froze when she saw me. I smiled politely, greeted everyone, and handed her a card that simply said, "Congratulations. Boundaries look good on you." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, and for the first time, I believed they were real. After the ceremony, there was a quiet hum of chatter as guests drifted toward the reception area. I tried to blend in, but I could feel eyes following me, some curious, others judgmental. I was the ghost of a scandal long whispered about and never forgot. I stood near the fountain, sipping champagne. When I heard her voice, "You actually came." I turned. Deanne, my sister-in-law, stood there in her lace gown. looking stunning and nervous all at once. For a moment, I almost saw the girl she used to be before entitlement ruined her kindness. I did, I said evenly. Congratulations. She exhaled, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. I didn't expect you to come after everything. Neither did I admitted. Her hands trembled slightly. I wanted to say I was wrong. About how we treated you. About what Mom said. You didn't deserve that. It caught me off guard. For a second, I saw honesty flicker behind her eyes. I nodded. Thank you, that means more than you think. She bit her lip. I was angry then. Desperate. I thought you'd ruin my life when you canceled that venue. I smiled faintly. Maybe I did. But maybe I also saved you from learning entitlement the hard way. She looked down. I guess you did. Before I could respond, her mother, my former mother-in-law, approached with that same forced smile that had once fooled me. Oh, you two found each other. She chirped. I was just telling everyone how generous you've been lately. Helping with other people's weddings. Isn't that lovely? I met her gaze calmly. Yes, it is. It's nice helping people who actually appreciate it. Her smile faltered for just a second before she turned away. Diane looked between us and whispered. She still won't admit she was wrong. I don't need her to, I said softly. I didn't come for her. As I turned to leave, Diane grabbed my hand. Thank you for showing up. I squeezed it lightly. Just make sure you never let anyone treat you the way your family treated me. She nodded, eyes glassy. I won't. And for the first time, I truly believed her. A week after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. I opened it hesitantly, half expecting more venom. But it wasn't from Diane. It was from my ex-husband. The handwriting was familiar, neat but heavy, as if every word was weighed down with guilt. He wrote about how the wedding had been bittersweet, how his sister looked beautiful, but there was a tension no one could ignore, how everyone kept whispering when I walked in, that I looked stronger. He said seeing me again reminded him of what he had lost, what he had thrown away. Then he said it, the line that stuck in my head for days. You were never the gold digger they said you were. You were the one with gold in her character. And I was too blind to see it. I sat there for a long time, staring at that sentence. I didn't cry, I didn't even feel satisfaction. Just closure. Because the apology I'd wanted for so long wasn't really for me anymore. It was for the woman I used to be. The one who bent over backward to be accepted by people who would never see her worth. I folded the letter and tucked it away. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. You can't change how people treat you, but you can change how much power you give them. Diane sent me a message a few days later. She said the honeymoon went well, that she and her husband were planning to start fresh somewhere new. She thanked me again for showing up, said it meant more than she could put into words. I smiled when I read it. Maybe she'd really learned something. Maybe we both had. That night, I poured a glass of wine, stepped out onto my balcony, and watched the city lights flicker below. The air felt lighter, the silence peaceful. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free, finally free, from the need to prove anything to anyone. And in that quiet moment, I realized, walking away wasn't revenge, it was redemption. A month later, word started to spread about me. Friends of friends, mutual acquaintances, everyone had their own version of the story. Some said I was heartless, that I ruined a bride's dream just to make a point. Others called me brave, a woman who finally stood up for herself after years of quiet humiliation. I learned quickly that people will always choose the version that fits their comfort. I didn't correct anyone. The funny thing about silence is, it unsettles those who built their power on your reactions. My ex-mother-in-law apparently couldn't stop bringing me up at every family dinner. She'd tell anyone who'd listen how I manipulated her son, how I stole her daughter's big day. But the louder she got, the more people began to question why she was still talking about me if I was the villain. Eventually, one of our mutual friends told me that Diane had stopped defending her mother. Apparently, she'd finally realized just how toxic that family dynamic was, how every woman who married into it eventually broke. That night, I thought about all the times I'd sat at their dinner table, smiling through veiled insults, the times they'd made jokes about my salary, the times I'd told myself, just keep the peace, it's not worth the fight. But it was worth it, the peace I have now. I'd moved into a new apartment, closer to the city. My mornings were quiet, filled with sunlight and music, instead of arguments and tension. I started going to therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to make sure I never let anyone dim me again. The last time I saw my ex-husband, it was by accident, at a grocery store of all places. He looked older, tired. He smiled faintly, as if unsure whether he was allowed to. I gave him a polite nod and walked away. No bitterness, no longing, just closure. For the first time in years, I wasn't defined by what had happened to me, but by how I rose from it. And that was a story they could never twist. 3 months after the wedding fiasco, I received a thick white envelope in the mail, my divorce decree. Final, official, over. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at it for a long while. The quiet hum of my coffee maker the only sound in the room. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt something I hadn't in years, calm. It was done, the weight was gone. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. My email pinged with a new message from the wedding venue manager. She wrote, "Just wanted to let you know we've updated your refund record. Also, you wouldn't believe how many brides are still trying to book your canceled date. You dodged a headache." I chuckled. Life really did have a sense of humor. Later that night, as I scrolled through social media, I saw a photo of Diane, my former sister-in-law. She'd posted a smiling picture of her and her new husband in front of a modest house with a caption, "Starting fresh." For the first time, I didn't feel anger, just a quiet understanding that we had both lost something, but maybe, in our own ways, found freedom too. As for my ex-husband, I heard through a friend that he'd been let go from his teaching job after missing too many days. He'd moved back in with his parents. His mother still couldn't stop complaining about me, saying I'd destroyed their family. But in truth, I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd just stopped holding it together. I leaned back on my sofa, letting the city lights pour in through the window. People like them thrive on control, on guilt, on manipulation. But when you finally take your power back, they have nothing left to feed on. I raised my glass to the air, a quiet toast to every woman who's ever been called selfish for choosing herself. Then I whispered to no one in particular. I wasn't petty, I was free. And for the first time, I truly meant it.